So Local Motors produces an automated low-speed shuttle called Ollie. And I thought maybe as introduction, you could tell us a little bit about what Ollie is. And I think, Taylor, you have a little video you can show folks that gives folks an idea of what Ollie looks like. So tell us about Ollie.
Well, thanks, Doug. Ollie is a low-speed electric shuttle, and it is something that has come out of what we call co-creation, and it is fully 3D printed, so it represents a new way of making things and also a new way of getting around. And we developed it in about 2016 as a prototype, and then we've evolved it, and this is the second generation of Ollie that you're seeing pictures of on the screen right now.
That's really cool. So it's low speed, it's automated, it's obviously has a ton of room, and it's 3D printed. So how much of the vehicle is 3D printed? All of it?
So about 80% of the vehicle is 3D printed, and you're right, it carries about 10 people. It can carry people standing up. Right now we ask people to sit down. You know, autonomy is a new thing, and so we want people to get comfortable when they're in it. It has a steward on board right now, so it's a level 4, level 5 autonomous vehicle. Low speed typically runs under 20 miles an hour. Can go faster, but those are typically the ODDs or operating environments in where it goes. And we see it deployed mainly on campuses that doesn't mean just school campuses, but we see it in hospital campuses in downtown areas and entertainment campuses, living facilities, business parks, those sorts of things.
Awesome. So how did you get started with this? What led you to start a 3D printed autonomous shuttle company?
You know, I was a Marine, and back in 2005, I was deployed in Iraq, and a number of my friends and I were there, and 2 of them were killed during that deployment. And I became incredibly inspired as to why it took so long to improve vehicles. In that case, it was in a military context, but same thing, like, you know, you were hearing stories about mothers sending their children, body armor and other things like that. And it's hard in a supply chain, much less an integrated development effort, to bring new technology to products like vehicles. And I got really inspired by that. And I thought in the military, if we could do it, we'd save lives. In the commercial world, we'd not only save lives, but we would bring in all this new technology that was coming. So in 2005, I was thinking EV. And then all of a sudden, as things came along, so the short story is I got out of the Marine Corps. I went to Harvard Business School on this premise, saying I wanted to start a new technology vehicle company. And I started to study how to do that. And the way it came out was that we have a very slow cycle for development of vehicles, like a real slow wheel that goes around. And I wanted to speed up that wheel to match the pace of tech. You know, you'd heard about Shenzhen and Guangzhou and Silicon Valley in and of itself. Moore's Law was developing new chips doubling the size of transistors, the amount of transistors every 14 months. But vehicles were being developed every 7 years, military even worse. So that's what really inspired me. That's how I got into it. And we figured out how to digitally manufacture a vehicle, hence the 3D printing, where there's no tooling and the development cost is about 5 times faster. So what we can do in a year now to develop a vehicle, which really matches the tech cycles, used to be done in 5 to 7 years.
That's incredible. So that means that as the use case or the need for people to occupy that vehicle or use that vehicle change over time, you're not waiting better part of a decade for it to catch up.
That's right. You're not introducing SUVs into the middle of a fuel crisis is sort of the old joke. And nobody would want to do that, but that was just the best you could plan.
Oh, according to the IRS, those are farm vehicles, sir.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's number one. It's really incredible that you're finding a way to kind of align manufacturing features and the needs of the kind of the mobile community to actually kind of align those things and bring things faster. So I'm curious. I know you started this sometime back. You just mentioned there's an Ollie 2. Where have you piloted Ollie? What are the most well-known places that Ollie's been running so far in the U.S.?
We are proud to say, actually, internationally, Ollie has run in many places. We started in Berlin and on one side, and then National Harbor Maryland. And so the state of Maryland has been very progressive about putting AVs on the road. And it's important to note in our United States that there are two things going on in regulation. There is getting automated vehicles on the road, especially level 4, level 5 vehicles, but there's also getting new technology vehicles on the road, which means a new way of building them, which obviously is what Ollie is, being 3D printed. And we're doing both. And so Maryland, very early, and then in California, we've had great luck in the Bay Area. We've deployed in a number of places, and we found that NHTSA, government grants, the FTA have been very supportive in trying to make these things happen. And so we deployed in Florida, we've deployed in New York, upstate New York, and multiple deployments in these places. And so, Sacramento State University, Sac State University. And so just lots of opportunities for us to Rancho Cordova in the Bay Area, Contra Costa. And so we're seeing these vehicles in the US roll out, but then internationally too. We did our first deployment in Turin right before COVID hit. We've been deployed in Scandinavia and in Denmark. And so we're seeing these vehicles. We have a couple vehicles in Korea now. And so level 4, level 5 vehicles, low speed, 3D printed, are out there in the world.
That's awesome. So this is obviously a very different looking, vehicle than your, garden variety Uber or transit bus. So how are people reacting to that? Maybe you could walk us through a couple of the kind of distinct features besides its shape that people are experiencing.
Well, it's a shared mobility vehicle for sure. And so one of the things that we see in the future is the vehicle is very spacious on the inside. It's very open. In the COVID world and post-COVID world, we're working now on cleaning techniques, HEPA filters, dividers, other items, things that our customers are asking for, because we know that people need to move, but they need to move with respect to what's going on in the world. We've included a number of screens on the inside and the outside, and those seem to be growing as real estate. Some of them are touch screens so that people can interact with the vehicle. And so we see that the sort of old notion of a radio in the front dash is gone by, and augmented and virtual reality are the things of the near future. And so we're seeing a lot more tech intensity in the vehicle. And so it's got a bench that goes all the way around it when you come in. Gave the idea that this could be an accessible mobility vehicle, and that's exciting to see accessible mobility be part of it. So now the vehicle we introduced at CES in 2018, we introduced what we call the accessible Ollie concept, where we not only had the traditional ramps, wheelchair tie downs, other items like that, but really what it is it allowed people to come in and be able, if you were blind, the vehicle would speak to you. If you had a sight impairment, the vehicle would help you find a way in order to be able to find a seat. These are all things that we pioneered with Accessible Ollie to not just be something for assisted mobility for a wheelchair-bound person, a passenger, but also somebody who might have other needs in the vehicle. So there's a lot of things that Ollie can do.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the more exciting things I think about Ollie is, from our past conversations, is the HMI, right? So part of it is, you're actually interacting with the vehicle as a passenger, and that's very helpful. But in terms of special needs, not everybody can physically use an HMI. There could be reasons that they won't be able to actually interact with that screen. So does it incorporate voice? Does it incorporate other ways to communicate?
It's a great question. It's got a great microphone system in there. And so we pioneered the ability to be able to talk to the vehicle. And so what that means so right now there is mandated for us a steward aboard. So you're more likely to talk to the human aboard. We found that interaction is very clear. But when the steward is off board, we've already prepared Ollie with a microphone. It's got speakers. It has, so if you can see the screens, it can communicate with you in that way. If you can't, then you can hear the Ollie talk to you, and you can either talk to the steward or you can talk to the Ollie. We've included a chatbot integration too. So when there is no steward, as AIs get smarter, there'll be the ability, certainly you can ask it to go a place, but also just get more information from the vehicle. We're seeing leaps and bounds of improvement of information on board.
Right. I think that's incredible. So in a lot of ways, you're really kind of piloting or pioneering a different kind of interior design for mobility, for transit, right? What do you think? What do you think? Kind of, let's say, Silicon Valley transit agencies could learn from what you're doing with the interior of an Ollie shuttle that may be helpful at a time when, you know, we're trying to, you know, we believe that we're going to be needing to really increase people's kind of confidence in public transit. They need to, you know, kind of win people back after what's been a very difficult time. What do you think you're able to teach transit agencies in terms of their buses and the way that perhaps they're delivering services?
We believe strongly that mobility needs to be really upscaled. It needs to be dignified. It needs to be something that people enjoy using. And it isn't just about getting from one place to the next as quickly as possible. We think that basically we spend a lot of time in traffic and other things. And the idea that, you know, just a radio and a leather seat is what you need while you're distracted in the vehicle is totally wrong-headed. We want your mobility platform to be something that like increases your relaxation and increases your productivity and increases things you can do while you are moving from one place to place. I think we've all learned in this COVID world that that if we don't move, we can be more productive, but we also lose the interaction with other people. So bringing those two things together where you can maintain productivity on the go, if you will, but also have a chance to go in a dignified way to get from one place to the next. These are the things that we want all transit agencies and operators of this. You know, I think people often wonder, what does it cost? It's not a car, it's shared mobility. So it's typically purchased by a, you know, right, an entity, a transit mobility, and you pay. And our goal is, you know, people don't often know the burdened cost of dial-a-ride for accessible mobility, or they don't know what the cost of running a city bus is, or even especially the cost of keeping up a road for a transit agency. So getting an EV out there that is smooth, easy on the roads, low speed, and has these capabilities of being autonomous can really reduce cost for people who are using it. You know, right now you could pay $25 in a normal time to go across the small city of San Francisco in an Uber, and that's just an exceptionally large amount of money to pay for mobility. And we've got to break the back of that. We have to find, and it's not by just offering it for free and losing money, it's making a better vehicle that costs less to operate.
Right. So I'm going to ask you a couple of technical questions, and I'm going to ask you a not cost question, and you'll understand what I mean in a second. So in terms of technical questions, kind of the computing platform, let's, you know, what kind of, you know, video, what other kind of partners are you kind of working with right now? How would you describe the operating system that you're employing right now?
So the silicon that's in these vehicles is changing at a radical pace. Yeah. We've heard stories from makers like Intel and NVIDIA and other people like that that are attempting to make new types of silicon that will manage what we used to think of as the vehicle control unit and then the body computers and those sorts of things. That's really changed because it really needs one whole computer, if you will, that is what we'd call ASIL level D. So it's capable of being able to do autonomous operations at a robust nature, which really defines kind of numbers of error per million line of code. And so these need to be robust when they're driving. So right now we separate it down into roughly 3 computer stacks. There's the computer stack that drives the, you know, torque, brake, and steer, if you will. And that is, you know, very robust. And then there's the computer stack that drives the autonomy decision-making that's there. And then there's the computer stack that drives the human-machine interface. So these are sort of 3 sets of computers in the vehicle. They will eventually come down to 1, which will reduce cost. It will reduce power consumption in the vehicle. But today, an average vehicle on the road runs about 26 computers. So we're already reducing the amount of silicon and the number of communication networks. We'll probably move beyond the traditional CAN network that's there to move faster. So right now, we have a number of makers of silicon that are on. So I know that a lot of people are wondering who the dominant player is going to be. I don't know that there is a dominant player yet. The industry is, you've heard in the big car industry, has said we won't see level 4, level 5 vehicles for a little while, but you're seeing them right now. So we like to work with any of the silicon providers that are interested in seeing level 4, level 5 come to market today, as opposed to 3 to 5 years from now.
So real quick, any thoughts on going full level 5, no steward, completely independent Ollie doing its thing?
Well, we can do it now, but it really is about regulation and public trust, and that is real. And so regulation and public trust means we're going to be deploying for a year, 2 more, where we're out there in every environment that we know more, then we'll be able to do closer to stewardless operations, which is about getting comfortable with the public trust and other items like that. You are very aware, we're all aware that Accidents with autonomous vehicles, though their rate of accidents is so much lower than the same rate of accidents in human distracted vehicles, they still get a lot of press. And so we don't want to hurt the industry by having something that could have been avoided early on. There's a lot of need to build public trust.
Got it. So we're almost out of time. I promised I would ask you a not cost question. Then I wanted you to also maybe tell folks about the pilot that we're going to be working together on in Palo Alto with the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority. So the not cost question, I'm not going to ask you what Ollie costs, because there is a thing called a bid process, and there's a lot of ways to look at that, and there's that wouldn't be a fair question. But how would you benchmark the cost of Ollie to an operator against other options? You talk about trying to break the back of that $25 Uber ride. How do you describe the benefit from an investment in Ollie?
Well, but for the shooting, how was the show, Mrs. Lincoln? I mean, there's a lot in that question. And what I would say is that the internal combustion engine costs a lot in service, diesel or otherwise. The hybrid engine costs even more, if you will, bus or car. And then having a human in a vehicle from an insurance perspective and others is the single greatest cost of any transit. So when we're talking directionally about where Ollie is going, if we're doing a not cost question, you're removing the two greatest pieces of cost. And then you're sharing mobility. And also, because it's shared, you don't need this huge 300 kilowatt hour battery where you can go from one place to the next without a charge. You can have a smaller battery because this network of vehicles can recharge while you take another one. And so basically from battery, steward, to electrification of the vehicle, you've taken the three biggest areas of cost and you've put vehicles on a trajectory to really get down. And so I like to think in terms of dollars per mile. Dial-A-Ride can be in the $50 to $80 per mile, if you can believe it, in cost. And then when you look at burdened Uber or Lyft to the user, it's $7 to $8 a mile, really, when you get out there. And then I think for us, I think what we want to do is we want to start seeing those $2 to $3 a mile rate and even pushing down into sub $1 a mile. And so we may not be talking about the cost of the vehicle. It's more relevant to talk to the cost of the user as they're out there. So today, the options for transit authorities are huge buses, and the best they can get are electric buses, which is a great move environmentally for us to be able to go. But getting to autonomy, I think smaller, more discrete shared transportation, we believe, is a better way to get inside cities. Big 40-person buses are hard to navigate some of the downtown areas.
Yeah, got it. So we're going to be working together. And I thought, just in closing, maybe you could let folks know about the project. You talked about accessibility, and you talked about how Ollie can provide services way beyond where you are today. Tell folks about what we're going to be doing.
Well, the FDA has really led here and created a grant process where there is, an opportunity to compete for getting accessible mobility. And we're working together with the Santa Clara VA to try to provide accessible mobility and to work on developing those features based on starting where we did with accessible Ollie. And so we're working together in Santa Clara is to try to promote the idea of accessible mobility and co-develop those features that are most meaningful. You may not need all of them, and you may have some that we didn't have in before, and that's what we're going to be doing with Santa Clara VTA. And it's just super exciting. We're going to have an Ollie deployed and be the vector for that feedback and those changes for accessible mobility, and funding provided by FDA. And we're just excited to work with Santa Clara VTA and Prospect SV. It's really an exciting step forward for us. It's what needs to happen. Accessible mobility is one of the best, right back to our founding story. It's one of the best use cases of technology, and it should be a leading use case.
Yeah, and what a great story that it's going to be deployed at the VA Palo Alto Medical Center, helping folks that are needing to access the hospital from the parking areas and other things like that. So it's really cool. So hey, we're out of time. We really do mean it when we say 15-minute break. I think we may have stolen a couple of minutes from other people's projects, but we're really happy that we could chat with you today. And thank you so much for all of this. And everybody, thank you so much. We'll be doing this again in another couple of weeks.